Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Jim passed along to me a story from the Globe and Mail, which is Canada. And it's a topic we've talked about before in several different settings, but I think it's a fun one to talk about here because it's the question being answered in Nova Scotia. But the law is very parallel to what we have in America. And the question that someone asked the columnist of the Globe and Mail is, do I need a license to drive on private property? Do I need a license to drive on private property? And the question specifically is, I recently bought a place in Nova Scotia. Do I need a driver's license to drive my pickup to plow the road on my own land? It's 20 acres. Do I need to have registration and insurance? And the question, of course, is do you need and is it required? We'll talk about that. So the answer they give is as long as you stay on that property, technically you don't need a driver's license, nor do you need the registration or insurance, as long as you're driving the vehicle within the bounds of your own property. But you might have problems if the car is ever stolen, vandalized, or hit somebody because of the insurance issues. But there are also some other oddball things you should be aware of, and these things will happen in America too. Nova Scotia's Motor Vehicle Act requires drivers be licensed and vehicles be registered and insured when driving on a public highway, street, lane, road, alley, park, beach, or place, including the bridges thereon. That came from a spokesperson for Nova Scotia's Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal. If you're on private property, those rules generally don't apply as long as the private property is not designed to be nor accessible for the general public. There's a typo in how they've got it written here, but I'm pretty sure that what I just said to you is correct. So private property, no one's going to be on it because it's not designed for that purpose and it's not open for that purpose. But, for instance, private property like a parking lot at a store, you'd need a license and registration there because that business is open to the public and people from the public access that property. So that's the difference between your property, the 20 acres out of Nova Scotia, or in Michigan, your 20 acres out on Mackinac Island. I'm joking, they don't have automobiles out there. But if there's a private piece of property that's open to the public, you need to have a driver's license there and registration and so on. So technically speaking, anybody could drive a farm truck, even someone who isn't old enough to get a license or someone who has a suspended license, for instance, as long as they stay on that property and the property is not open to the public. Now, here's the problem. If the vehicle leaves the property, even just crossing a public road, it needs to be registered and insured, and you need to have a license to drive it. And I know people think, well, I own property on both sides of the road. How do I get to the other side? You get a license, registration, and insurance. Now, the rules are similar across Canada and much of the U.S. You don't need a license, registration, or insurance to drive a motor vehicle on private property, except the exception we talked about, which is the private property open to the public. But in practice, this gets tricky because your driveway could be considered a public road if you don't have a gate and if people pull in and turn around and stuff. And so if you hit somebody while you're plowing your driveway and you say, I just pulled in to turn around and this guy hit me. There are situations where they've charged people for driving without a license in a situation like that. Now, that's going to be factually driven, meaning it's going to vary from case to case. And you're going to argue, of course, and say that person wasn't allowed to turn around in my driveway. They didn't ask for permission. I would have given it to them if they asked. But the point is that if people do that and you're aware of it, and one day you're plowing your driveway and you hit somebody, there's a chance that they come back after you and say, well, you were driving and this is a spot where people go. But there's a bigger issue, and that is the insurance issues. So, for instance, if you're driving without insurance on your own land and something happens to the vehicle, obviously that's on you. So you say, well, I understand that. What if somebody comes on your property and steals your vehicle? Well, you better have theft insurance or some kind of comprehensive on it. Otherwise, it won't be covered there. They point out that homeowners insurance probably won't help you because most homeowners insurance is written assuming you've got automobile insurance as well. And without liability insurance, you wouldn't be covered if you're sued for damages or injuries after an accident. So the example I gave that came from the article, where you have a driveway on your private piece of property and it's marked private property, do not turn around, private property, stay away, beware of dog, beware of owner, beware of everything, just don't come on my property. and you're plowing the driveway and somebody pulls in to turn around and you slam into them, okay? Now, whether a cop is going to write you a ticket and say you were driving without a driver's license, probably not. But if that person sues you and says, yeah, I was turning around, this guy rammed me with a snowplow, you're going to get dragged into court because you're being sued. That's what a lawsuit is. And if you had insurance, you'd call up your insurance company and go, guys, bad news, I'm being sued. And you'd turn in the claim over to them and they would defend you. That's part of the job of being a car insurance company, is they defend claims brought against their insureds. But you can't do that if you have no insurance in your vehicle. So at that point, it's on you. So now there you are defending yourself against a claim that arose on your property because someone came onto your property without your permission. And now you might say, Steve, I'd countersue them back. Yeah, knock yourself out. You're still in court. You're still getting sued. And you might be suing them. And when the dust settles, it'll cost you a whole ton of money. You probably didn't get ahead on it. So other things we've talked about before and didn't come up here is the idea that you can be charged with drunk driving and reckless driving on private property. And many of those same concepts apply. So if you were drinking and driving on your property and you caused some kind of harm to somebody and the police got called, they're not going to write you for driving without a license, though. But they might write you for drunk driving, and that's happened before. And, you know, we've talked before about like the parking lots. The parking lot of a store, you know, Walmart, Kroger, Meijer, whatever it is, they're open to the public. And police generally cannot come in there and write tickets for your run-of-the-mill infractions, like, you know, speeding or running a stop sign. Because the stop sign in the parking lot, although it looks like a real stop sign, wasn't placed there by a municipality. It's placed there by a private entity on private property. But many of the statutes we have, when they address the larger infractions like drunk driving or reckless driving, some of those things specifically will apply even on private property. The question becomes, if you've got 20 acres of land and behind you is forest as far as the eye can see, and that goes off in all directions, and you go to back park your property and you're just driving recklessly back there in a way that would be considered reckless if you did it someplace else, are you going to get ticketed for that? Probably not. Probably not. But on the other hand, if somebody gets hurt back there, number one, you're probably going to see a lawsuit if it ain't you. And number two, yeah, somebody might say we need to start charging people if people get injured and harmed by reckless activity involving automobiles back there. This is one of those topics that annoys people to no end. I'm going to get a lot of people saying, Steve, you're insane. That's wrong. I'm an attorney. I'm simply telling you what the laws are. I'm not here to tell you that the laws are right or wrong. I tend to be a libertarian in the sense that if I'm doing something that doesn't affect you, it's none of your business. If you're doing something that doesn't affect me, it's none of my business. If I've got 20 acres of land and I'm out back doing donuts in a mud bog, that should be my business. I agree. I'm simply telling you that the laws are there and these things can happen. So the question is, do you need a license to drive on your own private property? Probably not. Do you need insurance? You might. But if you don't want to get it, you don't have to get it. So there's the distinction. Jim, thanks for the story. Globe and Mail got the story from. Questions, comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Be strong. You never know who you are inspiring.